Only now, looking in retrospect, I'm realizing that as a child I grew up in complete neglect of my own body. Like, I hated who I was, I hated how I was, I hated in this thing I was back then. So like almost until my late teenage years, like I was living in complete alienation of my physicality and materiality, basically. I remember very vividly there were these moments, almost like these like growing physical urgencies that somehow my body needed to express itself. And then in these moments I would find the moment where I'd be like completely alone home. I'd find the like middle room, which was the darkest one, and I'll try to make that even darker. And I would put on the music and I would start dancing. Around my late teenage years, when I discovered the electronic music, and completely blew my mind, and that was like such a revelation for me. And it was such a fuck you to everything that I've known before. It was so liberating. So it was also time when I slowly started coming out to myself. I also started going out. The dance floor was basically the place where I would feel the most at home and at ease. And not necessarily because of people back then, because I was still very much socially awkward and I'd be very shy. I still am. And then it's like, even though no one believes that. And then, like, what I loved about this and what I still love about the dance floor is this, like, how it creates this space where you can just be among the people, and there's no need to have these on like conventional communications, but just like you share this space, and that was something very magical and important for me back then. Coming from the culture, which history actually I wish at some point to be written as a history of dance, but also the history of liberation through the dance. Like the earliest memory, personal memories I have are of the 1989 when the first anti-Soviet demonstrations was happening on Rustaveli Avenue. And actually that event triggered the larger political movements that ended up being like separating Georgia from the Soviet Union. And always, all the time, any political demonstration on the streets ends up with the dance. And in that sense, like every time when we talk about contemporary Georgian culture or art, like I believe that that one of the main aspects that should be emphasized is actually contemporary dance culture and underground dance culture. The dance is something that it's almost like this unknown, just like guides me and I follow it and just takes me to the places that are like really, really incredible to experience. This is what I've been trying to capture at some point in my work. You know, this sense of joy of returning to yourself, but at the same time this joy of liberation and expansion. even though the dance is such a transportive experience, right? It takes you in such a, like, on different dimensions. At the same time, for me, it has always this sense of awakening. Awakening is like bringing the materiality and the here and now.
I've got the power to see. I want to believe. Dirty rocking baseline, move it to the waistline.
I always also loved more smaller, intimate venues. This place, Bossa Nova, which was just a 10-minute walk from my home, and which was like open 7 days a week. Every time I would just like stop by on my way home. Many artists would play for the first time there, you know. So there was this always like kind of like this thrill of immediacy, of fucking things up, like trying things, like everything was like fresh and new, and that's something that I think what I loved about this like actual underground, like real underground. After I think almost like 8 or 7 years in New York, I felt this like sense and need to mark this sense of home and belonging that I slowly started to feel. So very naturally, this project emerged, Levani's Room, Chapter 1, Home, which was actually about this idea of home and belonging, which inevitably were these underground parties and places that made New York my home. In September 2020, for my birthday, I obviously could not do like big party or anything. I really wanted to like organize my own party. Like my invitation to my birthday party, which I did picnic here in Denver, was saying that like unfortunately I can't make the party, so we just like gather in the park. To which one friend of mine, she responded, "Parks are the new clubs."
Happy birthday, dear Matt. Happy birthday to you.
So that was also kind of like a very interesting entry point for me in rethinking this project. What does it mean underground anymore? What could be the new ways of organizing, of getting together? The fact that the Socrates is a public park for public project, it's also like I was thinking of this, like the other ways of inclusion, the other ways like to opening up this space to people for whom for somehow or some reasons this like underground spaces might be too coded or inaccessible. The sculpture at the Socrates is basically inspired by these stainless cast iron steel gates that are adorned by palm tree leaves, and that separates the dance floor from the bar. And as the main theme of the Socrates was the sanctuary, I wanted really to emphasize that the nature of sanctuary, not as a destination, not as an escape, but more like a threshold, like this moment of like taking breath and moving forward. I right away knew that I just wanted to have these like gates right in the middle of the park. I wouldn't be able to make it without like friends whom I met on the dance floor, like Rave Scout Cookies, online platform who gives voices for like underrepresented queer, trans, BIPOC artists. Buddy Double, Lucas Ross, my friend, whom also like I met actually Bossa Nova, and over the years like he became the DJ and he played there too. The emphasis was people who are on the dance floor and what it means to them and how they transform their lives. So the project at the Socrates was so important for me on so many levels. Of course, like first and foremost, it allowed me to do my first public sculpture. Like I learned how to weld myself, like cut the steel. It allowed me to work with musicians and make sound specifically for the project. And it's for the first time this sound was actually embedded in the sculpture. palm tree leaves of bossa nova and the palm tree buds that actually casted from actual buds became such an important part of my visual lexicon, and all my new projects are kind of, they show up in all my new projects. And it's also kind of like really opened up this idea of ecology as a place of rebirth, which is exactly where my work is going now. And most importantly, it allowed me to embrace and own that act of liberation and that freedom that comes with it, and to embark on these new paths of the unknown, which is extremely exciting and challenging at the same time, and I'm very grateful for that.